Welcome to another episode of Anyways. Today's episode is episode 11 of season 2, entitled "The Horrors Can Come." I'm Ben,
Chad,
and in this episode we buried William Bullock, son of Martha.
we
and
personally
Steph.
did.
Yeah, we picked up his child-sized coffin for bloody knuckles and weirdly carried it on our shoulder with a stone face
Yeah, can I just follow you at 5 feet or whatever?
for 20 paces.
For 20 paces.
Can you stand that, Bullock? As Al did to Bullock in this episode, it was
That's his godson,
yeah,
Ben,
yeah.
okay?
Get out of here with your sick fucking ghoulish thinking. It is a great episode to me. It follows the funeral of a child, and it is again about the town's reaction to the death of an innocent, and they're all surprisingly disarmed in spite of their sometimes evil murderousness.
Yeah.
They're all disarmed. But let's start at the funeral. You always make fun of the voice of...
He's a cartoon frog is what he should be. It should be like just randomly there is a 2D hand-drawn cartoon frog and he is the preacher.
Yeah, Andy Crane. It's like he has like a singing voice, like just like his singing voice would be weird. Mm-hmm. His preacher voice is different from his regular voice, and he's just like it is. And it's like he's never been a preacher at a funeral before. Clearly,
no, he keeps talking about corpses and worms eating into flesh and stuff.
He did not choose the right quote. And he's looking for like a little bit of guidance from the family.
And man, Bullock is just giving him that death stare, like he just wants to rip his fucking arms off and beat him to death with it.
And again, everybody's getting super dressed up for a funeral, so his Bullock's hair is completely slick black.
Yeah.
So it's like emphasizes his weird little posture and the shape of his head. But yeah, his face gets so intense that he just wants to kill him, and he's just like, well, these are all the different things that you can do during a funeral. What would you like to do? And then
whatever you think is best.
Yeah, and it's
and
it's just like his eyes are wet with the intensity of the coming
of
assault.
murder.
It's really good, and there's a lot to it though. There's a lot more to discuss about it because it's like the funeral is bad.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's a shitty funeral. And
but there is something.
Yet it serves the purpose of a funeral.
There is something moving in there when Martha comes back out and says that she wants people to come in.
She's like, at first they're like, what? We don't want anybody in our fucking house. Then she's like, oh wait, this is the last time anybody will see my son.
Right.
His body. His
corpse.
Yeah. And so she's like, suddenly, and again, I think it's something that Deadwood does a lot, where it's like, there's a societal thing. Sometimes it's like the aspects of a town and how people relate in a community, and it's utterly empty and stupid and meaningless. But then all of a sudden, you perform the ritual, and they're like, okay, well, this is actually a pretty good ritual, and I want to be a part.
Right.
And so...
Except for Al,
he cannot be a part because he just got to be in control all the time. But Andy...
He's got to be at his desk. He can't even act like he was out on his balcony watching the proceedings. When he sees his 3 henchmen come up, he has to quickly shuffle back inside and then casually stroll back out the door as though he just came out.
And the tragedy of it is that Al really maybe doesn't even need to do that.
No, he doesn't.
If Al had a different sense of himself, he could be like, it's normal. I actually can go to the
my
funeral.
fake godson's funeral.
Yeah, and show respects. But, like I think it's like...
He has to keep up the appearance that he is something to be feared. And something to be feared is not something that shows up at a funeral or a
cares
wedding.
About children.
Yeah.
But I think it's also, if he allowed himself to consider feelings, then he would have to let his guard down for so much else. All the people he killed, the child he tried to kill.
For Mr. Wu.
Yeah.
And going through his troubles in this.
The murdered prostitutes that are being thrown into
a fire
at the beginning of the episode.
And he has to act like he doesn't care so that he can make sure that Wu goes back and tells everybody over there that's like, he's not going to come help us.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want to be implicated in this and get back to Mr. Lee. and then that get back to Hearst, and then Hearst comes down on him hard.
Yeah. But it's just the scenes of him on the balcony, Al, and running back it's just a little sad.
It's very sad.
I think in the town of Santa Clarita, California, in Melly Ranch where this was filmed, I think Bullock's house was built on that same set with the gym. It's just down the street. I've seen maps.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they couldn't do the shot, but the way they shoot it, it's like
it's great.
Al is in a different country.
Yeah,
it's like he's just looking right.
He's having to like lean over the banister as far as he can, and he's like trying to look around a corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the natural thing would be to show him looking in a direction and show what he's looking at.
Right.
We never see what he's looking at, which makes it awfully cartoonish and weird.
It's great. I love it.
I mean, maybe they couldn't film the crowd scene on the same day they filmed the Al balcony scene, but
maybe, or it feels like a choice because there's a lot of that going on in the show with Al, where you just see him on the balcony and then you see what he sees, and it's almost like he's God. He can see everything that's happening.
But you just can't see this child death over
But he
there.
can't see the funeral for whatever reason. And so that's him. It's a great character moment for him, too, because he's like trying so hard to see what's going on, but he can't appear as though.
And last episode, Doc Cochran, or maybe it was this episode, Doc Cochran says about God, he's just sitting next to, between two people at Joni Stubbs who are prostrate and sick. And he's just like, I know he's omniscient. I doubt he's omniscient, but I know he's myopic, which is, like kind of relates in the idea that he can't see to all the harm that happens.
Yeah.
I really like the story of Al Swearingen in this season or in any season. The story of Al Swearingen, I'll just say, is that he has more humanity sometimes, and he goes to Bullock, and Bullock again has built with his own hands his child's coffin with a look of like rigor mortis himself on his face.
Yeah.
With a bloody knuckle, and Al comes up and wordlessly offers his handkerchief.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I'm sorry, Bullock. Or he says that maybe before. But then he's like, it again shows a lot of actual respect and human feeling. And he never allows himself to show it to Trixie. And then Trixie also is, again, that all the people who are most hung up on the proprieties of the prostitutes, the whores, as they call them in the episode, are the prostitutes themselves. Trixie is worried about, they won't act up.
Right.
No one else gives a fuck. And she has to like go get permission from Saul and go get permission from Al.
Yeah.
And none of them give a damn about whether or not these prostitutes are at this funeral.
Right. But they care.
Well, they care because, it's been beaten into them. Literally. But
but also like they're back there like wailing and stuff during the day because they're thinking about this child dying, and Al's having to scream, "Shut the fuck up!" at him. It's like constantly. Because he's worried because nobody's gonna fuck any of the prostitutes that are wailing, crying.
Well, Trixie mentions the post-funeral fuck rush, so there will be funeral as if it's like a normal occasion. Like that's just what happens after funerals. As she's collecting all the different drug paraphernalia, she has all the prostitutes lined up and she's dressing them down,
right? Including
Jen, who she says she has bad breath and
she has 7 kinds of cock breath.
Yes, and it's just like it's treated as like a matter of course that there would be this wave of emotion and feeling. There'd be an incidence of drug use before the funeral, and an incidence of high increase in business after the funeral.
So you saying that it serves a double purpose, that the prostitutes can then go grieve, but then also it's like trotting all of them out in front of the masses so that then they can see them.
I don't know.
And then go back to fuck them later.
I think that the joke is the joke is similar to like one from like Mr. Show where the wit girls are always being separated from the boys at play. Like it's kind of the joke is it's a very dark joke, which is the prostitutes are treated as less than human. Yeah. Which they are consistently, and they're treated horribly and murdered as just horrible shit happens to these poor women.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, they get to go. They're treated like humans.
Yeah.
And so it's like the town gets a little bit better in this one moment.
Right.
And it's surprising, and it's an act of wonder and grace. But it's just like, it's fucking dark. That this is, I don't know, it's just a dark show.
No one's ever thought that before.
No, definitely not. Also want to note that as Al talks to Bullock, he's walking past slaughtered chickens, just like all the tables for selling things in the street are up, but no one's at them. But they're just a huge mass of slaughtered chickens that are naked and bloody in the foreground and in the background of the shot. It's just like, just so he can't forget the biology of dying.
Right.
But there's let's just jump ahead to different interactions with Bullock.
Sure.
One, there's Hugo Jari, and Hugo Jari again
is a nightmare.
Like he says something like,
he comes up when he walks up to Bullock's house, and Bullock sees him from the window, and then walks outside, and he's got his same death stare that he had earlier with Andy. And as soon as he walks up, does he even get to say anything? Jari?
He just says yes before
Jari says anything.
Which is what Al told him to say to continue the fraud that they're being courted by Montana as a rival to annexation, to up the price.
Right.
On Dakota annexation.
And then without pursuing the conversation much further at all, Jari is just like, I didn't even want to come, basically. And it's like, but thank you for telling me. Bye.
Yeah. He says something like the awkwardness of coming almost prevented me from coming at all. Yeah. Which is just like, just really, it's like, again, he has the form of social graces, but he has none of the feeling.
He has no idea how to execute any of them.
Yeah. There's also this thing with Bullock in this episode where Martha has taken all of her clothing.
She's getting ready to fucking leave.
As she fucking should. And you're like, this is a fucking loveless marriage. And the best thing about the interactions between Martha and Seth is just that they're so frosty and ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they fucking double down at the end of this episode. He's like, he repeats a line back to her in classic movie style. It's like, we said a line earlier, now we're saying it again. He says, whatever will let us live as we are now. And it cuts on that. And that's the end of the episode. But it's just like, Martha and Seth do not need to be together. I'm sure that there is this tragedy and they're showing kindness to each other in this tragedy, but this is their marriage is an empty house.
Yes.
Where they frostily say things, and sometimes they'll say it while crying now, but basically they're like these like kabuki theater puppets,
right? Who
just say monotone shit to each other, and it's all about like their idea of propriety, and like neither of them fucking loves the other, and now they have a dead child. It's a terrible thing.
Yeah, it's a fucking nightmare. I mean, she's trapped in a nightmare with him.
Yeah, and again, historically, we may note that I don't think the Bullocks had a dead child, and Martha Bullock was actually his childhood sweetheart and not his brother's wife. So it's
right.
This is a particular spin. I think the name of this type of marriage is levirate marriage, which is a biblical. I'm not mispronouncing it, but it's a biblical thing where you marry your brother's widow just to make sure that she's okay. It's just as a matter of course, that's what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And I think for some reason David Milch was interested in the concept of levirate marriage. On the happier side of things, Mose Manuel lives.
Mose Manuel does live.
And
he wakes up to being stitched on or something. I wasn't really sure what was happening. He was measuring things with his finger. Cochran was.
Yeah, Cochran was, I don't know.
I think it was stitches, but I'm not really sure.
Was it this episode where, I guess it was maybe this episode where he wakes up and then Jane is like, kicks Constapleton out, and then she says that him waking up to Joni Stubbs he'll think he's in heaven.
Yeah,
I thought that was sweet. But Jane makes another whale comment about Mose,
right?
And
that doesn't go away.
No,
they just keep making bad jokes.
It's like these are sympathetic characters, but they need to make fun of this man's weight. Why? And again, we're missing the scene where they have license to do that. Yeah. Because usually Jane's pretty. Well, she's not always that empathetic. Sometimes she's full of insults. I don't know.
But you can usually understand where she's coming from most of the time. But then she's just like really, really mean to Mose.
Yeah. Let's see. I guess there's not much that happens with Mose. Let's talk about Mr. Wu.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Mr. Wu gets fucked over pretty hard in this episode. He witnesses that's the beginning, right?
Yeah, he witnesses
the burning of the Chinese prostitutes by Mr. Lee. and tries to do something about it, and then summarily gets his ass handed to him, and he has to walk away.
Yeah. Well, these are prostitutes who have been starved to death and charged 10 cents to have sex with, and then their bodies are just being openly thrown. And Al's annoyed because it's in his.
It's an offensive smell, and
corpses burning in a town that is like a street wide.
Right, and so Wu goes to him and asks for help, and Al summarily shuts that down and is just like, "Nope, fucking Wu, get out of here! I can't help you with your little rivalry with your."
He says it really memorably. He says, Swedgen understands. Swedgen does not give a fuck. Yeah, and it's just
fuck.
And it's so brutal. It's so brutal that Adams and Johnny, his henchmen, look down.
Like, yes, they can't deal with.
Wu is our friend.
Exactly.
Who are sometimes racist too, but he's our friend.
But we can't abandon him.
Yeah.
And then immediately once Wu walks out the door,
Al goes for the bottle. He's like, "I'm getting everybody drinks.
Let me explain to you what's going on."
And he explains like he's going to undercut. He thinks Hearst will enjoy beating him, playing his Chinese forces versus Hearst's Chinese forces, but that he wants to undercut the price of Mr. Lee's workers versus Mr. Wu's workers,
right?
Presumably for the mines, though. In actuality, I think South Dakota passed a law where there could be no Chinese workers in the mine because Chinese workers were very successful in mines all over the country, and I think there were again, this is a time of widespread anti-immigration laws against Chinese and racism. And I think also, as I said last episode, this may not be very historically accurate in terms of open burning of prostitutes in the street, but it may be accurate in terms of the racism against Chinese. But it may not have been so associated with some of these things that are in the series.
Yeah.
But Mr. Wu, he gives an out how they can support Mr. Wu.
Right.
And also really love that Mr. Wu is bringing the reason we call China like nice plates. China is because a lot of it came from China. So he brings to show what he's talking about, the country of China.
Where?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, like the place.
Right.
He brings a piece of China.
Right.
That has a picture of China on
right.
it. And that's a weird thing. But let's see what happens in the episode. He gets Mr. Lee in his office, and there's this weird shot of him preaching to Mr. Lee, where he's like, "Act civil, by God, act civilized, even if you ain't."
Yeah.
And then as soon as Mr. Lee leaves, he drops this weird pose, which is reflected in this length mirror, and then just is like, "Yeah, that was good." And so it's again for his henchmen. He's like, "I'm defeating Mr. Wu's rival. I'm also, I don't know."
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just he put on a show for Wu, he put on a show for Lee, he did all the things he needed to do to win the propaganda war of, fighting against Hearst without directly fighting against Hearst.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they kidnap Mr. Wu.
That's at the very end.
Yeah, but I mean, we can jump to it for the rest of this thread. It's just like they're like they scoop him up very
because Wu, they come to him and they're like, "Al wants to see you," and then Wu's like, "No, here, like bring him here," and they're like, that fucking Al Swearingen is not gonna come down to the Chinese alley and stand here in the mud with you. You have to go to him. And so they pick his ass up and haul him up to Swearingen.
Yeah. And it's it's played comically. Mm-hmm. And it's like all about how he's just like kind of in there, these three men's arms. And
he's like a turtle.
Yeah.
Wiggling his fucking little legs.
Yeah. And I don't know. I feel, we hypothetically, in the future, we met the actor who played Mr. Wu. And he's a very relaxed Californian man named Keon Young. He's very, very nice and kind. And to me, it was shocking how less formal than Mr. Wu he was. And it's like, and again, if there was world enough in time, if there were enough hours in the day to have a Mr. Wu series, it would be nice to see a few other aspects of him. And just see something other than comic guy who can't speak English.
Right.
That's a beat, and it's a
that plus badass who is in charge of the Chinese alley.
Yeah, he's also that. He's also a gangster. But it's just like there's a lot more they could do with the Chinese population in Deadwood. What struck you about this episode, Chad?
Why did he want Hawkeye in the last episode?
Oh, he wanted Hawkeye because he wanted Hawkeye to find Adams, to tell him where Adams was. That's what Adams explained to Dan when he found him.
That's right. Okay.
It's really convoluted.
That's so strange.
It's super. The show is oftentimes like making a show of how like we're really complicated, and it's just like no,
that's
just some silly shit.
Just some silly shit. Okay. I don't know why that just hit me. I was just thinking about it, and I was like, "Why the fuck did they need Hawkeye?"
That's to me the fun of like talking about Deadwood is, it's like Shakespeare again, which is obviously what it's trying to be. Is like you kind of have to poetry. You have to rattle out what it actually is trying to say.
Right.
And a lot of times it is saying it 100% more innately than it should.
Right.
But that's fun.
Yeah. No, it's totally fun.
We have another scene where Farnham interacts with Mr. Blazanoff.
Oh, yeah. And Mr. Blazanoff holds true to his beliefs. He will not let Farnham deliver the telegrams to all of the inhabitants of the hotel, and he will not let them stay in the little pigeonholes or whatever he calls them.
Those things that are in the background of the hotel clerks where you put your messages.
He will not let them rest in there because he knows that Farnham's trying to look through the shit. Farnham even offers him $5 a day because you're going
to lose gratuities.
You're going to lose gratuities.
Deliver them to door.
Right. So,
but he doesn't seem to understand that Blazanoff has like a history of the confidential communication that he ties to his parents' deaths in Russia, and so it's like, but it's another one where it's like, at first he's like, I think about our friendship, Mr. Blazanoff, and Mr. Blazanoff smiles, and then Blazanoff doesn't understand the English well enough, but he gets the import.
Sure, yeah.
And it's like you're trying to bribe me.
Yeah.
Painfully
obvious.
Yeah.
Even though EB thinks he's being very secretive.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the line the EB says at the end of that scene? It was great. Why is avarice counted among the sins, but not stupidity?
Stupidity, at least. Yeah. I
That's so great.
I guess he's saying that he's stupid for turning down the money.
Sure, he's like, why is my sin a sin, and why is that guy sin that he's just stupid and he won't take advantage of the sin that I have?
Yeah,
and then we should all have.
Yeah, but it's very flowery, take the money, and beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. I love it.
There's a scene where Jules says to Saul, explaining why she ran to Al last episode, "The pimp's a whore's familiar." Which I like that phrase. Which it reminds me of a phrase from like Idiocracy. There's a scene where a guy is talking about like the ideas of a pimp or something, and it's a very ridiculous scene. But it's just like this seems outlandish here. Drixie is a little over the top as a character. She's always like way angrier than everybody. And,
there is.
And she's always talking about things that no one else is talking about.
There's also a fairly ridiculous scene in this episode that is unlike Deadwood in a way, where they start talking about superstitions. It feels like a sitcom moment where it's like where you'd have one person come in and then the next person come in. They're talking about the same thing, and then finally the third person comes in and is like, "You two guys are silly because you don't understand the real superstition here." And it's like, okay.
Yeah, I like that scene.
I mean, I like the scene, but it is very unlike Deadwood.
Yeah, it's like Johnny finds a dead bird and says that predicted a death. Dan says you can't wear new footwear to your funeral.
Yeah.
And then Trixie's like, you can't put boots on a door or else you have to sprinkle
alcohol
on a bar or else you have to sprinkle alcohol on a doorway.
Right.
And
to keep the evil spirits out.
And then they end the scene with Johnny saying, she must have brought that superstition from across the pond. Her superstition's not like ours.
Right.
From the other side. And I think you're supposed to understand that she was born in Europe and she brought over here. And like Paula Malkinson, who plays her, is Irish or British. I think she's Irish. But anyway, Trixie, this character in the show, is not clearly from across the pond.
She's not clearly from anywhere.
Yeah. And so it's just like, it is a weird scene. It's like they wrote it as a joke and then they never made it more real.
No.
It's like it is out of place.
It was only a joke and that was it.
I was excited that Tom Nuttall brought a piece of the number 10 with a flower attached to it that said the number 10 to the funeral. I thought that was
Did we
weird.
talk about Tom Nuttall last episode?
I don't think we talked about Jane. We didn't talk about Jane finding him crying with snot dangling out of his nose.
Okay, let's talk about that real quick, because that was so sad to see how hard that hit him, and it carries over into this episode where he has a piece of the tin, like you said, and it's got a flower arrangement kind of like nailed to it or something.
It's like arts and crafts.
And so I'm sure that if he wouldn't have been able to see William, that probably would have like really affected Tom Nuttall. But it's good that Ms. Bullock finally decided that they could go in, because Tom Nuttall touches my heart in a way that few of the other minor characters do. And it would have been really sad for him to not, even though we don't even really I don't think we get to see it, but it would be sad if he didn't have the opportunity to say goodbye.
He should maybe think about not operating a bar in Deadwood and maybe doing something with people that aren't killing each other so frequently.
He should open up a bike shop.
Yeah, sure.
That's what he should.
Oh
do.
yeah, you're right, because he loves velocipedes so much.
Yeah, he loves the bone cruncher or whatever the hell it's called.
The bone shaker.
Bone shaker.
We also, the weirdness of this funeral with all these prospectors just milling through it on their way to the digs, like not paying attention.
Oh, it was a good house here.
Yeah, go inside the Bullock's house and
take a look around.
Yeah, it's again like the idea of a funeral as a ritual is kind of called into question as like kind of a ridiculous thing.
Well, it's very strange because like they do that very old school thing where they actually lay the body out in the table, like on a table, in the house, and leave it there. So they're just like constantly walking around their child's like dead body leading up to this funeral, and then the coffin is just in their house, and it's like, I mean, maybe we have too much separation from that now, but that seems like way too much interaction with like a dead body from somebody that you used to know.
Infant mortality was huge, and
I mean, I know it's common practice. It's just like disturbing.
Yeah. In the real life Deadwood, infant mortality was low because there were few children.
Yeah.
And actually, someone pointed this out in both the historical record and also online. Deadwood actually had a lower death rate than other towns in that area.
Yeah.
Like not in that area, in the country. Like if you went to Chicago or, oh gosh, now I sound like a right wing talking point. But anyway, fuck that. God damn it. But a suburban city, a suburban area at that time had a higher, basically the death rate was low in the Wild West is a major point, which is the Wild West was not so wild as something that historians often say. And
that's a lot of what we learned in Deadwood too.
Yeah.
Was that it's just, there were like less than 10 actual like big gunfights that happened throughout history. Yeah. Like as we think about them.
But, on the other hand, in Deadwood's, the television series' favor is a lot of the stuff, if not literally right, is often right in terms of the relationships and the things it's saying. Yeah. Also, there were a lot of fucking disrespect for life and murders. Yeah. And people died and were treated like shit. And a lot of times that didn't find its way in the public record. Right. And, a lot of what the show is saying is here's what the printed word was for this era and here's the truth of it. Right. Let's see. The city of Memphis, which we are currently in.
Oh, it was referenced.
It was referenced. Cy Tolliver and Andy, they first learned to do shit together there.
Well, yeah, on the riverboat route.
Yeah. So
in Memphis.
That was a point of personal pride. We were excited to hear. Memphis
so prideful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's talk about Andy and Cy. Andy is a preacher.
He also gets his junk grabbed by Cy, who also keeps knocking him on the head repeatedly.
And threatens to crucify him.
Crucify him in the forest where he almost died the first time. And Andy basically says, I will suffer any indignity, but I will not allow you to interfere with the work of the Lord. That's what he says.
And Cy is saying, I taught you all the cons and several of which started with you pretending to be a preacher.
So don't try to run this fucking game on me. And I'm not running the game. I'm serious.
And then he goes back in the place again later in the episode.
And starts screaming shit in the fucking doorway about repenting or some shit. And Sai's just like livid.
Sai says, Jesus fucking Christ.
And then he gets his ass thrown out and beat up.
Yeah, and it's just like, Andy, take the win. You had a great funeral despite having no qualities of
and stumbling around and falling into a creek.
Yeah, and the creek, which is what Bullock's son talked about with the boy who went off to Oregon. It's just like there's this moment where it's like his funeral is so bad that it transcends itself and actually makes Martha forget herself enough to actually grieve
because it is so bad. Yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah.
Walcott offers Farnham a price on his hotel.
Yes.
Which is pretty cool.
Which makes Farnham hot and bothered. And he makes an excuse about Walcott saying that feels rather cool. Because Farnham talks about how hot it is.
Yeah.
In there, only because he's now flustered by the fact that he's been offered something for his hotel. The only thing that he has going for his fucking life right now is his fucking hotel. Yeah. And Walcott is basically trying to take it out from under him now.
And we saw this earlier with Alma trying to buy the hotel from him.
Right. And so he yells for Richardson to come in there and somehow make him cooler. I
think he's like he implies he's going to go to hell to cool the furnace. He's like, if you fear from our immortal soul, if you don't see me, if you do not feel chillier in a few moments' time.
Yep. And I mean, basically he just talks a bunch of nonsense and then backs his way out of the scene into the back room. That have we seen? The back room.
I think that's where he was choking on clove soap.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
But he's
but I think that's a season 2 edition, right?
I think
the back room.
I think he does a lot of monologuing back there.
Yeah.
But he says they think they can take everything from me. Right. Somebody just offers him, name your price.
They can take everything from me. But all he cares about is the hotel. He doesn't care about anything.
I think he cares about money.
He does care about money. But he really likes having the hotel.
I think he really longs to be loved and respected by his peers.
Which he thinks is because he owns that hotel. That's the only reason that he's useful to them in some way.
And really what he needs to do is maybe focus a little less on money for him.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess he's doing that now, but maybe focus a less on reflexively cheating and bribing every single person that you know. Or cheating and robbing.
Yep. We're forgetting something very important.
Yeah.
Blowjob monologue.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. The return of the blowjob monologue.
The return of the blowjob monologue.
Yeah.
Incredible blowjob monologue with Dolly, his scene partner. And she's down there doing her thing with her boobies out. And he starts talking.
You're talking about Al.
Yes. He starts talking about his brother's funeral, or who he was supposed to call his brother. I guess you find out in this that he was adopted.
Well, I mean, he was in an orphanage.
Right, and he gets adopted.
And he's referred to him as brother before.
Sure. Yeah, with the preacher, right?
His brother died of epilepsy.
He has the same affliction that the preacher, not Andy, but what's his
Reverend
name?
Smith.
Reverend Smith had epilepsy. And so, yeah, he just basically starts complaining about his life. You get to learn a lot, way too much about Al in this scene, in a way, more than you've learned about Al in a long time, because he doesn't really talk about himself unless
he talks about Mrs. Anderson again.
Yes, he does talk about her.
Who sold them from the orphanage, I think, to this family, and his mother
sold them to her. That was his pimp, quote unquote.
Yeah. And he talks about getting beat again.
Yep.
Who Jordan, who's not here right now, but he talked previously about how important beatings are to Al.
Yes.
And how he's someone who is just it's a formative effect on him that he was beating the living shit out of.
Right. And that's something that teaches you something.
Yeah.
Because he talks to Merrick about it. Yeah.
But it's he gets distracted in telling us about his life, just like he did previously.
Right.
To ask Dolly how she enjoyed the funeral, and then she gets distracted from. I think the actress gets distracted, from miming a blowjob.
Yeah.
And it becomes more cartoonish.
Yeah.
Where she's and then she's just lifting up to say, "Oh yeah, the funeral was nice. I enjoyed it."
Yeah.
And it becomes, instead of this intense scene about the orphanage and beatings, it becomes he gets to know Dolly.
Yes. Which, usually she just has a penis in her mouth, so she can't communicate anything. And so in these rare moments where she gets to actually say something, and then he immediately just shoves her head back down. And then as he's sitting there admiring her, he was like, did you color your hair? And then she very over exaggeratedly starts bobbing up and down with her head.
In the direct opposite way than which she had been bobbing.
Yes.
And so it's like, he's like, did you dye your hair? It's very conversational, a modern way that you would just talk to a girlfriend. You'd be like, did you
did you dye your hair?
Yeah. And it's good. Again, as always, these guys, they show human qualities, and it's just like.
But it's also like a Walcott thing. You know what I mean? Like those jokes we were talking about earlier with him making the joke about the politician.
Oh yeah.
Or whatever. It's that same kind of tone.
Yeah, a little comic.
Yeah, it's basically, this is only a joke. That's it. And it's just like, eh.
Well, no. I think Al Swearingen is really getting along better with Dolly.
Sure.
She's just a mute Trixie substitute, and now she's actually his friend.
Yeah. Well, enough.
Another development this episode is Ellsworth and Alma. Ellsworth is carrying Sophia up the stairs, and Alma is like, I say yes to the question that he's correcting Sophia on. She should say Trixie and I instead of me and Trixie.
Yeah.
But also yes to marriage.
Right.
And Ellsworth is just frozen for a second. And then he sticks his tongue out at Sophia. So
as he's wont to do.
Yeah. He's like a loving father figure. What do you think of that choice? Do you think that Alma should marry Ellsworth?
It's obvious that the thing with Bullock is not gonna happen because there's just too much in the way.
Yeah.
Without that, Alma needs some stability not just in her life, but also with her business venture.
Yeah.
And I mean, Ellsworth's a good guy. I don't know. I mean, I've got two answers.
Okay.
For practicality's purpose, of the time that they're living in.
Cover up she's pregnant.
Yeah. Yes, you should do it. But no, she shouldn't do it because she doesn't like Ellsworth like that, and they won't really be happy together. So, those are my two answers. I would be happy to be married to Ellsworth.
I'd be happy to be married to Alma. But both of them are. I mean, except for the drug addiction and being in love with another man.
Well, yeah, never mind.
But
definitely Ellsworth.
Yeah, Ellsworth would be Ellsworth is a solid fucking.
Yeah,
dude.
I mean that's a dream.
Yeah. Poor goddamn Alma and poor goddamn Ellsworth.
Yeah.
And I don't think, do we have a loving marriage in the show? I don't know. I guess we don't. We don't have a couple in the show who are actually happy. Maybe Trixie and Saul. They're happy in the show.
They're happy enough.
And I mean, they have some problems, obviously, but yeah.
But that's about the closest you get.
Yeah. Anyway. Anyways.
Like, subscribe, share.
Peace.
Buck-toothed beaver slapping logs. You can't keep the gold from me.